Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. So today I had the fortune to be introduced to a really fascinating woman. And once I got to know her, I knew I wanted her story out there because she has so much to teach and so much to offer. And I was learning so much with her. I wanted you guys, as our listeners, to be able to learn as well. So today I'm welcoming Laura Khalil. She's a leading transformational speaker, helping Fortune 500 companies close the leadership and wage gap for women in business. So for those of you who have known me a long time, I have a clear passion around women stepping into their value and earning what they're worth and owning our space there. And it very much comes from us on the internal side. So now you know how Laura and I click so quickly. She has faced many challenges and is going to share a little bit of that journey because there's a lot of insight there in as we transform. As well as today, what she does is she teaches women and allies on how to develop the habit of courage to achieve their dreams. She has spoken to audiences at Forbes, WeWork, Creative Mornings, to name just a few. In the interim, in the transformation, she also ran a full-size marketing company, built that from scratch, touching clients like Twitter and GE, also to name a few. So she's a real powerhouse of a woman. Lord knows you can read the real bio in the show notes. We want to talk to you, Laura. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Every time we've jumped on the phone, I remind myself of the hour that we have to stop. So
tell me about it.
In that, share a little bit of your background and where you came from. Truly, you have a background in marketing. You launched a market consulting agency in 2013. Give us a little bit of the before that and the after that.
I'm happy to. You know, I was not someone who grew up always knowing exactly what they were going to do with their life. I still have trouble answering that question of what I'm going to do when I grow up. And when I was growing up, I did what everyone told me I should do. Went to a great school, got married. I had that quote unquote dream life. And you know what? I was miserable. And that must have been 2007. I was feeling very, very trapped in a marriage that was bringing me very little joy. And my life was going off the rails. And I said, this is not what I want to do. I'm not living an intentional life. I'm not doing what I want. So I sort of blew everything up. And
you know, there's something even just here. It's so often especially when we're young, we do what we know to be the quote unquote in quotes right thing, or what we've learned is the right next steps, and we start learning that and we start acquiring that for others. And when we're not true to ourselves and check in on that, it very often it derails, and it has nothing to do with the marriage or anything, or that we got married young or anything, but we just didn't stay true to ourselves.
100%. And the fact is, I didn't really know who I was. I had no clue because I had always been a good girl, so to speak. And I said, no, I'm 27. It's time. I could see, kind of my life ahead of me. And I thought, I don't know who I am, but that's not it. That's not what I want. So I ended up moving to San Francisco. I was living in Montreal. I moved to San Francisco. Why? Because it's a place I always wanted to live. And I had a ticket to go there. And I worked my butt off before that ticket date was to get on that flight. And I got a job in an apartment in 6 weeks by just sort of every night, every day going to work, every night going on Craigslist, searching for a job. And I manifested it, showed up 6 weeks later in San Francisco, fresh as a daisy, ready to start my life.
So all of a sudden you started, I always wanted to go to San Francisco. Mm-hmm. You put the intention out there, the goal out there, took the action, and started living true to you.
I sure did.
Nice.
It was the one thing I knew I wanted, was I wanted to go to San Francisco. It had always been in my heart. And I got there, and that's where I started my career in technology. Now, I knew a thing or two about marketing, but I didn't know anything about technology. So I pretty much begged.
Silicon Valley is the place to learn it.
That's right. And so I just really begged my way into the first company I worked for. And they hired me because I was ambitious and driven and enthusiastic. And it was funny because I would start going into meetings with the guys that I worked with. Most of these were men that had been hired by our executive who were his buddies. And, you know, I'm a pretty driven woman, and I am not afraid to speak my mind. I've never been afraid to speak my mind. And I go in these meetings and I thought, oh, I can be just like one of the guys. I see how they're talking. I see how they're advocating for their projects. And so I do the same, which came very naturally to me. And one day my boss pulled me aside and he said, Laura, we have some feedback for you. And I said, that's great. I love feedback. I want to learn. I want to grow. I was super, I was trying to rocket my career, very driven. And he said, well, I've heard from the men in the boardroom that you're intimidating them. So we're going to need you to smile more and soften your language. And this was very, very hurtful to me at that point in my career. I had no idea how to deal with this. I was shocked. I felt betrayed. And
You're
eventually,
also very much at a place that you were finding your own 2 feet again. You were finding your independence. And that's a blow. That's a tough thing.
it was a tough blow, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And eventually I did get put on a performance improvement plan and listed on there that I just needed to be nicer. And I thought, this is absolutely crazy. And mind you, this is only, less than 15 years ago, but a lot has changed in that time. Back then, this was acceptable. So I ended up leaving that company, and I found myself kind of repeating this pattern where I would go to the next tech company and I would be brought in because they were excited because I was so enthusiastic, determined, and driven. But once I got in the door, they were like, oh, she's just a little too much. And if anyone listening to this has ever had the experience of feeling like they are too much to be accepted, I feel you. And I'm going to tell you what happened. So that went on for a number of years. And I'll tell you what, by 2013, I was at another startup. My boss had just been fired, and I felt like I was at the end of the road. I had a very clear vision that if I kept doing this, if I kept repeating this cycle of going into companies and it never working out, that and I mean this truly, I felt like I was going to kill myself in 30 years.
Yeah.
But that's how it felt.
I
I was desperate and I was miserable. And I said, well, Laura, the common denominator in your experience is you. So there's only one thing you can do, and that's to change your circumstance. So I did. I left that last company and I said, I am not going to go through this again. And I decided over the course of a weekend, I built a website. Now, mind you, I knew a lot about marketing. I'd kind of been a Jack or a Jill of all trades. So I built this website for myself. And I said, I'm a developer marketing consultant. Now, I worked in developer marketing for many years. I knew the industry very well. I also knew there were very few people consulting in this area.
Right.
So I kind of had a target niche specialty. And I just put it out there. I made business cards and I started telling people, and I thought, all right, well,
good morning, I'm in business.
Hello, I have a business.
I get it.
You know, I didn't know what else to do. I just knew I couldn't go back into a full-time role and repeat the cycle. And this is when everything changed. And everything changed, I mean, literally in a flash. I went from starting that rinky-dink website to 6 weeks later, I got my first Fortune 500 contract. I was working with Intel. I worked with them for about 5 years. And they hired me because of who I was, not in spite of it. And
So
all of the
you
work.
all of a sudden started connecting with people who saw your value,
Yep,
saw your strengths, and wanted you for the value, strengths, and what the deliverables they would receive from,
exactly.
not how you fit into what they considered their male team.
Exactly. I was hired because as a consultant, you are seen as an expert. And
Right.
I had a very, I had a way about myself where people would naturally trust my expertise, which I did have by that point. So I became a real asset to all these companies, and all of the traits that I was penalized for as an employee became my greatest assets as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I worked with companies bigger than I ever imagined on contracts that were global initiatives. Um, and that business took off in ways that I really did not expect to happen. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. But I will say to folks, when you step into your truth, when you step into who you are and you accept it and embrace it and share it with the world, absolutely incredible things start to happen in your life. It's like you become incredibly magnetic. And that's really what happened.
So what then, how did the next transformation happen? Because you're a marketing
Yep.
company with major Fortune 500
Huge
clients,
contracts. Yep.
major contracts. You have then again, and this, transitioned. And here's something that says for myself, Lord knows, I know the year in 2007 that I said, I'm not going to die a printer. I was making a great living. Money wasn't money was flowing. My family was happy. My lifestyle was wonderful, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I knew that moment when that came to me and how the next transition happened. And we all have transitions in our lives. And that's, one of the things that connected the two of us is that common denominator of we build these great things and then that's good. And there's more.
What next?
Right. And it's not like, oh my God, I'm done with that. It's, as you're saying so well, Laura, what's next or what's more?
Mm-hmm. So what happened was about 3 years ago in 2017, I was invited to speak at a conference called Intermittent. It's a conference for change makers. And I never spoken before, at least I don't think I had, that I can remember. And I'm a natural storyteller. That's part of my marketing background. And so I got on stage and I was shaking in my booties and, my voice trembling and all that stuff. And I told a similar story to what I'm sharing today. And after I told this story, and I like to share with people, advice for what to do moving forward. And I got off the stage and people started coming up to me after and they said, Laura, what you said really impacted me. And this is really changing the trajectory of my life. And it's really helping me have breakthroughs in ways I haven't imagined. Can I coach with you? And I thought, well, I don't know how to help you. Like, what do you mean coach with me? And so but people were persistent. And so I was like, okay, well, fine. I mean, I guess you can coach with me. So I would take on these clients. In the background, I was getting a human behavior certification because I'm fascinated with humans anyway. And so as I'm getting the certification, I start coaching these folks. And I realized, you know what? About 2 years went by. And I realized as I was speaking more now, I was getting on more stages. People wanted to hear the story. People were feeling liberated from the shackles of whatever self-limiting beliefs they had put themselves in for why they could never be enough, do enough, have enough. And I realized after about 2 years of speaking, while running my business, that it was time. And my last contract was ending. And it was huge. You cannot imagine the amount of money I walked away from. Huge amount of money I walked away from because I said, I cannot continue to do this one more day. I know and I believe that I have a mission on this planet, and it is no longer to do this developer marketing stuff for tech companies. It is to help individuals find their voice, just as I did, stand in their truth, and follow what really matters to them by developing the habit of courage. And so I left it. I literally, again, I left it all. I blew it up and I left it. That was maybe insane, but
to many people, I'm sure it is. Okay. And to many others, it is courageous, it is gutsy, and it's understanding that when we step into our own values, that we can build anything. And there's that core belief that truly when you are stepping in to your value and living by your values, that $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, it's all chump change, because all the capital will flow as you live and work your truth.
Absolutely. Oh my God, preach. Yes. And that's the thing that people don't understand. They get so stuck in the fear of changing, or they think, I can't change. My friends will find it weird, or my colleagues will find it weird. I don't know how to explain it. I just want to say to anyone listening, you have permission to redefine yourself at any point. And it is okay if you say, I've had enough. I'm ready to try the next thing, or I feel called in a different way, and money will follow. Opportunities will follow. I, again, did not really know what was going to happen, but I was shocked at how, at what sort of came up for me and the opportunities that appeared for me. And I'm not going to say that it has been the easiest thing in the world. So
no, I mean,
I don't want to say that.
You have to understand, you know what, when I said what I said, it's not without the work. It doesn't mean that you could just like show up and it's here. You have to do the work. You have to do the follow through. You have to do, and when I refer to the work, you have to do the inner work on the belief and the values as much as you have to do the outer work on taking the consistent action.
Oh yeah.
You know, so there's a combination of both that equals that success formula.
And as you know, it's the most satisfying thing you can do. I have never felt so satisfied in my career and in my work and what I'm offering to the world as I do today. I mean, I imagine you feel similarly about what you do.
There's a reason why I wake up before an alarm every morning. And without a grudge of like, oh, I couldn't sleep, you know. That piece of menopause luckily is a little behind me. You know, but I wake up because I'm ready to start my day.
Yeah. You can't wait.
Right. I'm ready to jump in. I'm ready to create more relationships, help more companies grow, and truly see the value of what they do in the relationships they build. You know, the marketing, sales, and financial and mindset I bring to the table is I just wake up open because I'm meeting them where they are. And that is such a beautiful, beautiful thing that, you know, that's where the gold is. That's where the diamonds are. That's where, that's all that shiny stuff.
I know.
You know, and that shiny stuff for me sometimes is just a bouquet of flowers, and it's that blossom.
You know, as you were talking, this reminded me of something, and maybe you felt this as well. I started this story by saying, you know, I was in this sort of marriage and things were going nowhere. And then I had these bosses who were telling me they needed to be nicer and smile more. And I was feeling really in a rut. And you could, on one hand, be very angry about that stuff. But I want to tell folks, I have an incredible amount of gratitude for all of those experiences and all of those individuals today, because I would not be where I am without those challenges.
Yep.
I truly believe, and what I teach is that we all grow right at the border of support and challenge. And it's about picking the challenges you want to go after versus the challenges that are boring to you, that are inauthentic to you, that drive you crazy and drain you.
So tell me a little bit about, you know, your business today. Mm-hmm. And you've made different moves now in your life again on a personal basis, you know, yes, based on your values. So share a little bit of how you have continued to stay true to yourself and the business you have built accordingly.
So the business today is focused on something that I am fanatical about, which is called courageous communication, which is really, so I go into companies and I do training to help individuals respond to microaggression, minimization, and unconscious bias in the moment as it is happening. Because as you guys heard in my story, I didn't know how to respond to it when it happened to me. I had to learn how to respond to it over time. That's a beautiful gift of that experience. And so we teach individuals how to do that. And I love the training because people leave and they find their own personal empowerment in that process of not feeling victimized anymore or not feeling shut down when we're just stunned into silence. And I left, so gosh, what was it? I left the Bay Area in late 2015. My business has always been fully remote. That is very important to me. And so I left the Bay Area and I moved back home. I'm actually originally from Detroit, Michigan, and I wanted to see the revival of my city. I also wanted to be closer to my parents in their older age to help shepherd them along. And so here I am, experiencing this beautiful renaissance of Detroit, experiencing the creative revival of the city, which nourishes my soul quite a bit, and traveling around the country and world working with clients.
That it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful transformation. And what is great is how you've stayed true to yourself and your values every step of the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the hugest lessons in this, in this session today, in this interview, of hunkering down, taking that time to really find what's important to you. And you did that.
Yes.
And then you built a plan, and any time that things deviated off and they were off your values is when you shifted. You didn't shift haphazardly because you were bored. You didn't shift, because there's a lot of people who are like that brass ring to the right, to the left, and you're jumping for everything. But you're in your story, you have such continuity to be hunkered in the value, and you had the transition based on when things no longer worked in your values.
Absolutely. And the thing I'll say is my anxiety, my overwhelm, my stress reduced dramatically when I started living according to those values and stopped trying to subordinate to the values of my family, of my community, of my coworkers, of all the shoulds in my life. And I will tell you that it's like the stress melts away when you say, you know what, my greatest gift is actually to be myself, which I know sounds cliche, but it's really the truth.
So share with the listeners, how can they learn more about you?
So if folks want to learn more about me, first thing, why don't you go and sign up for my podcast, Brave by Design? We talk every week with luminaries about how to live well and lead well. Head on over to Instagram. You can find me at Force of Badassery, or my website is also Force of Badassery, and we do weekly live trainings on there. So I would love for you to join me. And thank you so much for having me on the program. This has flown by.
I know. So one last thing for our listeners out there, if you can share one tip, one insight that would help them in all of our journeys, myself included, what would it be?
Oh my God, where to even begin? Okay, that's a good
I knew
question.
I threw that one.
Whoa.
That was a 1,000-pound question. It's like, yeah, just give me a little something here. Surprise.
Here's what I would share is that if you cannot have gratitude for how everything has led you to this moment that you are currently in, you will never know how to appreciate the riches that are coming your way. So there are so many people who spend their lives chasing towards the next thing, never to stop and say, my God, what have I accomplished? What have I done? Thank you for this. And so I would say to everyone, take a moment to sit in gratitude for how this moment is a culmination of all of your dreams. We don't do that enough.
I love it. I love a great gratitude practice. And I cheat on it a hell of a lot. But the one thing I do is when I wake up in the morning is I stop for a minute and I think, where am I? Because I do travel a lot as well. I think, where am I? I was like, wow. And I might not say I'm so grateful to be in this Marriott, yet I will say, wow, I'm so grateful to have the life that I can be in this place today. And it's just that grounding moment. And today Laura and I am interviewing Laura from LA, and she's in Detroit today. And by the time this airs, we're both going to be in different places. So I really appreciate that tip of just take that moment and hunker down in the gratitude of what we have and what we have the ability to create.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me.
Laura, thank you for joining me. Listeners, always stay tuned for more interviews as insightful and wonderful as Laura's is today. We have some series coming up soon, so stay tuned as we launch our series this in 2020. We always highlight a few different times a year with special series focused on some wonderful things, and they're always fun. Most importantly, feel free to leave us a comment. What your takeaway was, what was insightful to you? What else you want to hear? We're here to serve and deliver. Thanks for spending your time with us today.